Use cheat sheets. It's very important that you prepare answers to commonly asked questions in advance, or the questions that you were provided you from that specific company that you're applying for. But it's very important that you note down ideas and you print them out and have them nearby during the interview. This often makes a huge difference. Look up if the company that you're applying for has any sort of core values or leadership principles, and also have them printed out as part of your cheat sheet, simply because more often than not they would also screen you on whether or not you're a culture fit. And if you have that in front of you, chances are you'll have a much better chance of spotting on whether they will ask you a question directly from those leadership principles or core values. So a phone interview will be by phone, so only by voice. And my point here is that you should try to lean forward while speaking instead of backward, to tend to feel too relaxed in a job interview. So if you lean forward, you'll have a tendency to be more engaged in the conversation. So this is a trick to pump up a little bit your conversational skills. Use headphones. Don't just stay with your phone for 1 hour like this, because it's going to feel very uncomfortable. So using headphones, it will save you, will allow you to essentially focus more on the interview as compared to other things such as holding your phone. Now, this might seem obvious, but you should look for a location that has into which you have a great signal for your connection, or you should have a strong internet connection if you're doing it via internet. And I can tell you from experience, I coach many people these days, and it's surprisingly often that people don't have a strong connection when having such an exchange. And during 1 hour, it really matters that if one party understands the other and vice versa. So try to ensure the connection is the best for a phone interview. Prepare at least 2 or 3 questions for them, and not generic questions. I have many lists on my channels, but prepare questions for them, because they will always ask you some question on whether you have any questions towards the end of the session. And if you don't have any question, that will raise some question marks, and you actually miss an opportunity to score more points in an interview, right? If you don't have an answer to a question, to a behavioral question, not a technical one, but to a behavioral question, you could start to talk about a hypothetical situation, such as, for example, if they ask you, how do you make trade-offs between quality and cost? You cannot remember a specific situation in which you exhibited this behavior on the spot, then simply go, whenever I have to make trade-offs between quality and cost, I always prioritize quality. And if you remember something on the spot, and one specific example of this would be this one, right? So this is how you avoid introducing long quiet periods in the conversation. And of course, you don't say, hey, I don't have an answer to your question, which would be a big mistake in the case of behavioral interviews. Positivity and energy sells in a job interview, whether it's going to be for the telephone screen or not. On the other hand, negativity is your worst enemy, and there are too many people that are going into the interview with the wrong type of attitude, like, hey, I really want to switch this job. Like, no, you should focus on the interview, try to put together a great show during the interview with positivity and energy, and hopefully you're not going to exhibit any negativity, any negative thoughts, because those are the real killer in many, many phone screens. So when I said in the beginning that you should have cheat sheets nearby, you should ideally find the list with the most commonly asked questions for job interviews. And I have a ton of these lists on this YouTube channel. I would very much encourage you to focus on the most commonly asked questions and try to give your best possible answers in those cheat sheets. Because if you're going to try to cover as many scenarios as possible, for example, if you go on Glassdoor and try to crawl through all the possible questions, you're actually going nowhere, because the quality of your answers will be insufficient for a phone interview with a high-performing company. And finally, it's not enough that you prepare answer on paper. Try to role play them with someone. Try to see how you're going to speak out an answer, and This very much is also in line with the cheat sheets, and an incentive not to write the full narrative on a cheat sheet, but rather some key points, key takeaways, simply because the spoken answer is very different from a written one. So ensure that your communication skills are good enough that you communicate whatever you want to communicate during a job interview, and this you usually achieve through role play. So if you have someone nearby, try to role play these questions, because it's a very useful exercise.